Hello, everyone. God bless. It's good to see you again. I'm Eric Smith, your host and the founder of what is called I Want to Breathe Station. As we all know, this station was given birth as a result of the death of Mr. Floyd, who died at the hands of a police officer as he placed his knee on his neck and kept it there until life ceased to exist. So I want to thank you for joining with me again. It's been my pleasure to be here with you periodically. And as I promised you in the last segment, that we would have a website up and running so that you'll be able to look at and see the things that I'm involved in. It also gives you the opportunity to purchase my book that you've been hearing so much about, entitled From Crack to Clergy, Provoking Thoughts. If you go online to Reading Changes Lives Inc. Inc.org. Again, Reading Changes Lives Inc. Inc.org. You'll be able to look at the book and order it, and also see the other things that I'm involved in, such as the Reading Center, a nonprofit organization founded in Chattanooga, Tennessee, on behalf of my parents, Lizzie and Frank Smith, both of whom were illiterate, unable to read and write, and so we're pushing the literacy movement. Again, I want to thank you. Here's a copy of the book for the newcomers who have not seen a copy of the book. But when you go to the website, you'll be able to look at it and read some excerpts from it. And most of all, you'll have an opportunity to purchase it. With the book also comes a reflection guide that you can purchase as well. After reading the book, you can go through the reflection guide, which causes you to dig a little deeper and to process the information that you've gained from reading the book. I highly recommend it, that you buy both. And they're reasonably priced. In addition to that, it's important that you give some comments on, you can rate me if you like, whatever you think about the broadcast of what I'm doing, if it's valid, if it's not valid, or what can I do to make it better. But it's my hope on this station to enable us to have a greater insight into not only what's happening in the world as it really relates to racism and the tensions that are mounting up each day, but to deal with reality, deal with real things, deal with things that impact us directly and indirectly, that causes us to act. And we want to look at that very carefully, because we know that this country has had a problem with racism ever since it has existed, which leads us to conclude then that this country was founded upon racist views, meaning those that were in control and who wrote the documents, the Constitution, if you will, even though they had a good heart and may have meant well, but those that are in power altered it in such a way that it would benefit those holding racist views. And we've learned thus far that racism is a systematic way of keeping a set of people, a group of people, in place or in check or at a subsistent level. Therefore, I would highly suggest and say that that's why black people cannot be racist. They are not racist because they have no power, no systematic system whereby that they can keep another group of people, anyone for that matter, at a certain level economically. So we've got to get away from saying that black people are racist and that type of thing. Now, they could be prejudiced, but there's a distinction between prejudice, biases, and being a racist, if you will. We've been dealing with the subject of can racism destroy America? We've dealt with 1, 2. This is part 3 series of Can Racism Destroy America? And in that, we're going to look at how fear is a primary tool that is used in the implementation or in the system of racism. The last segment I opened up with a song. That song, by the way, came from my book entitled From Crack to Clergy, Provoking Thoughts. One of the poems that's in the book is entitled, Who Are They? I've converted that poem into a song which is entitled, Who Are They? And I sung that song, and that song simply gives an account of things that took place and that were laid at the feet or placed on the backs of those people that look like me. It talks about how hard life is and rough and unjust. But at the end, they continued to dance. It talked about how life brings many pains and it seems there is no change, but yet they still laugh. And so throughout that poem and now song, we find that these people that are of color, black people in fact, seem to bounce back quite a bit from harsh treatment, embarrassment, and being beaten and broken, not only physically, but mentally, psychologically, and emotionally. They tend to bounce back. They're able to endure quite a bit of pain and distress. And perhaps that's one reason why black people are more susceptible to high blood pressure. Just a thought. I'm no doctor. I can't prove that, but it seems to reason that that could be one of the primary sources or reasons why they suffer from high blood pressure so much. And so as we look at can racism destroy America today, we understand that there is a segment of society, there are many people that believe that they are better than some other folks. And also, there are many people in this world, in society, that believe that some people or groups of people, ethnic groups, should have no rights. And it doesn't matter what they say or what they feel, because their lives really don't matter. And we explored how powerful racism is. So powerful that perhaps it can cause people to even think and believe and accept what has been taught and what has been broadcast for hundreds of years, that their lives don't matter, that in fact those who fight for their lives and their rights really, in fact, don't believe that their lives matter. The power of racism. We're going to look at two things on this segment as we look at the power of racism and whether or not it can destroy America or destroy anything for that matter. Can it destroy our thought processes, our mind? Can it beat us down? Can it take away self-confidence? Can it remove our ability to be sensitive and practice empathy? The power of racism. So we're going to look at a ABC Nightline report that I did years ago. And we're going to look at, number two, periodical reviews, basically is what they're called. One being from the ABC Nightline, okay, and two being the psychopathic racial personality, written by Dr. Bobby Wright. And so in that order, let us begin. Periodic review, social and cultural perspective on human behavior. written by me. This is my research done. And it comes from a report that was displayed February 24th, 1999 on an ABC television show called Nightline. It revealed that racism exists in the healthcare field. Ted Koppel was the commentator, the news reporter. He stated words to the following effect: this would be the group in this country where you would least expect to find racism, that is, in the medical field. However, he said, studies show that blacks suffer from medical problems at a greater rate than whites. Further research shows that if this continues, that African Americans will be decimated. The research reports came from New England Journal of Medicine. It is surprising to find that those who have taken an oath to preserve and maintain life are biased in their work to preserve life. Here's what the research and what Ted Koppel, found and what he discussed. He said that doctors place more value on a white person's life than a black person. And one would think that economics played a major role rather than race. But research had shown that blacks either poor, middle class, or wealthy, poor health care still remains. It's a question of race. He cites it's a question of race. For example, a black man in New Orleans had his leg amputated because of his race. Government surveys show that blacks are twice as likely as whites to have a leg amputated. Blacks are less likely to be offered an operation, says Harvard researchers. African American life has always been devalued in this country. Perhaps that's why so many people hate the sight and the sound of Black Lives Matter. Perhaps it's because they're saying that no, Black lives can't matter. Black lives can't matter. We don't want Black lives to matter. Just a thought. What other reason would people be so angry and upset and ready to commit a crime or murder or hurt someone by merely stating that they value their lives? But anyway, it goes on to say in this report that African American life has always been devalued in this country. Why? Could it be a self-serving bias or cognitive dissonance? One could want to keep the status quo of being better than another and would act accordingly to serve their own need to feel superior, the report says. Or maybe history plays a part in this decision-making process. History has taught that blacks are inferior and therefore their lives should not be of any value. Again, maybe that's why so many people that are racist hate to hear that Black lives matter. Yet doctors are taught to save lives. And this can cause some discomfort and imbalance and inconsistency in their thinking, which can cause them to lie. It can cause doctors to lie. It can cause them to ignore the truth to maintain a balance in their thinking, even at the expense of taking a leg or a life. The power of racism to maintain the status quo. Furthermore, Dr. Cleve Callender states, blacks wait for transplants twice as long as other ethnic groups. The type of illness does not seem to matter, states George Strait, an ABC News reporter. In fact, 36 surveys over the last decade show that black babies are 2.5 times more likely to die before age 1. Blacks are 34% more likely to die from cancer, twice as likely to die from heart disease, 50% less likely to get heart bypass surgery, and 25% less likely to get pain medication. Perhaps this is why Black lives doesn't matter to those that hold racist views. Clearly, we can see there are two Americas, one black and one white, the report says. Doctors claimed, however, that they treat the illness and not the person. This claim was tested using actors who had the same symptoms. The actors had the same jobs. The actors had the same insurance, but a different color. Out of 700 doctors, out of 700 doctors, 40% chose not to refer blacks for further treatment. 40% chose not to refer blacks for further treatment. And blacks were seen as lower income, even though they held the same job and lived in the same place. The perceptions that racist views form, the perception that racism causes one to maintain. The late Supreme Court Justice Thurgood Marshall said, "Everyone has a certain feeling about people of another race, good or bad. We must recognize this fact and get rid of it." How can one get rid of something without first recognizing there is something? Very simply, we need to acknowledge the truth and how we feel about a certain color, a certain people, and question it. Where did it come from? Is it valid? Should I feel this way or not? And finally, the report says, as stated by the Surgeon General, has been known to say that the relationship between a black patient and a white doctor is like a master-servant relationship. Let me say that again. And finally, the Surgeon General has been known to say that the relationship between a black patient and a white doctor is like a master-servant relationship. History has both shown and taught us that the master has no respect for the servant, no love for the servant, and of course, no value for the servant's life. Perhaps that's why there's so much hatred toward the symbols and the writings and the saying that Black lives matter, because they themselves are racist. Regrettably, the report ends with, "This has not changed, and racism still lives silently, but stronger than ever before. We must work at breaking down those biases, stereotypes that continue to cause pain, suffering, hatred, and death to a race of people, all in the name of racism." And that was written in 1999. The report was done based on a story reported ABC Nightline by Ted Koppel. Black lives are not valued in this society, and that's why we hear a loud voice now in a movement crying out into the world, saying, yes, Black lives matter. Because in this country, the evidence is clear and very powerful that Black lives have not mattered in this country. But in fact, They do matter. The next thing that I wanted to share with you has to deal with a U.S. history report from a black perspective, as written by Dr. Bobby E. Wright, psychologist. It's entitled The Psychopathic Racial Personality and Other Essays. Dr. Bobby Wright was a black psychologist who used his educational training, intellectual knowledge, and skills in the interests of black people. Dr. Wright was born in one of the oldest all-black communities in the United States, Hobson City, Alabama. His professional career was outstanding. He was a truant officer, a teacher, college educator, school psychologist, mental health administrator, clinical psychologist, researcher, consultant, author, and computer expert. At the time of his death in 1982, Dr. Wright was director of the Garfield Park Comprehensive Community Health Center located in Chicago. This health center, which now bears his name, became the largest totally black controlled freestanding mental health center in the United States. This research, the psychopathic racial personality, is defined as follows: an individual who is in constant conflict with others, persons, or groups, and is unable to experience guilt, is completely selfish and callous, and has total disregard for the rights of others. Rights. This is found in the psychopathic racial personality. It further goes on to say that black people all over the world have been beaten both physically and mentally, robbed both monetarily and spiritually, totally disregarded as a person or a human being. And finally, the moment of truth is setting in, whereby now, look around, what do we see? We see the true colors, the psychopathic personality. It has been hundreds of years now, and black people have and remain trying to conform to the Eurocentric system, to the dominant culture system, which is represented by such things as democracy. The dominant culture, the Eurocentric system, is represented by capitalism, Marxism, religion, and education. And all of these banners or symbols are now being changed with technology changing rapidly. Blacks are not assets anymore, as they were when they were picking cotton and free labor, you understand. However, Africa's resources are being exploited even more, which brings an awareness of black national consciousness. Blacks are now a threat to the white race. Therefore, the banners now held represent only one concept for black people, and that is genocide. Genocide. Is there any evidence of that today, I wonder? The periodical review further states that the black neighborhoods are filled with drugs and liquor stores. and patrolled heavily with police. Can those, excuse me, we know that that's true. In black neighborhoods, they're filled with drugs, liquor stores, and patrolled heavily by police. But can those activities promote a healthy life, physically or mentally? Or will they increase the chances of curtailing black life? The major research of white scientists are genocidal in nature today. Nuclear warfare, population control, medication control, genetic engineering, psychosurgery, electrical stimulation of the brain, and the highly complex science of behavior technology. Yes, it is time for blacks to look at the truth. But not only blacks, it's time for the world to look at the truth. And perhaps that's why the movement is so strong now, stronger than ever before, because we see the impact of it. It's not only impacting black folks, because as I look around the cities throughout the country, I see so many white people walking on the streets, homeless, walking around aimlessly, endlessly, daily, no food, nowhere to sleep, sleeping wherever, using the restroom on the street in public. It's impacting everyone at this point. Racism is very powerful. But the report goes on to say this: yes, it's time for blacks to look at the truth. It's time for the world to look at the truth. This presentation of psychopaths is based on the simple premise of how whites have treated or reacted to the presence of black people throughout history. There is a scientific dictum which states everything that exists in some amount. And if it exists, it can be measured. By observing the behavior and attitudes of white America toward blacks, we can measure the psychopathic traits of white people. And so, as we prepare to close this segment, the question still remains: can racism destroy America? What evidence do we see today of racism and the impact that it's having upon society, the people today? Does it exist? Some say that it doesn't. What type of a person can say and would say racism doesn't exist? Could they be racist themselves and not know it? Racism is a bully. In fact, we can see some evidence of that. If I hurt you and do something bad to you, you don't supposed to say anything. You're supposed to take it. Keep your mouth shut. We see the evidence of the police shooting black men, unarmed, with no threat or threatening gestures being made. Shot in the back many times, more than once, 6, 7 times. Choked out, at home in the bed, kicking the door, being shot, shooting black folks. But if we or the people rise up and say enough is enough, we don't like this, there's something wrong with this, then we are told that you better shut up or I'm going to send the feds after you. Or we're going to have law and order. Law and order comes into play when the righteous is seeking righteousness. When the people are seeking justice, then law and order wants to stand up and speak loudly and act boldly with threatening gestures, just as a bully would do. But there's no justice. There's no mention of law and order when lawlessness is occurring. When we have officers shooting blacks unarmed in the back multiple times, no threatening gestures. Where is the law and order when our leaders are today not talking about what's being seen in black and white or in living color on camera? There's no mention of that. But we talk about those. Now, I'm not advocating it's right for the looting. No, we shouldn't be looting and burning down things and stealing. No. But peaceful marches should be allowed. And people need to vent, should have the right to voice their opinion and not receive threats of violence from the police department about if you march or if you out talking about what's going on in the police department, then somehow you're being labeled as non-American. You're not patriotic. The racist system is corrupt and it turns the table. But I want you to know that there's some that may say that this message is hate, filled with hate. It's not. I'm happy to say that I'm a carrier of love, and I love love. There's a song by Stevie Wonder he put out years ago that says that the words may cause a problem for many people because he found that there was a time that love needed love. Because he found that there was no love. Can it be that we're lacking love today? Can it be that we need to increase our love? We've seen so much evidence of hatred throughout history, but we've seen very little evidence of what can come from love because we failed to exercise love. I challenge all of us to not only love each other, but to love ourselves. We've seen how the racist system can cause one to even hate themselves. We've seen evidence through the research how black people would choose a white doll over a black doll. We've seen evidence of how people would rather be light-skinned, bright-skinned, rather than being dark. These are the impact. This is how the system of racism corrupts, divides us. But I say to you, let us not be fooled anymore. Let us not be bamboozled anymore, or played, if you will. Let us not fall into the trap of, as someone said, do you believe your lying eyes, or are you going to believe what your leader's telling you? Let us be smart today. Let us stand up for what's right for all of us. For we do know that we can do more together than we could ever do divided. Let us continue to love on one another and to help one another, for this is the only way that we will succeed. I do believe that we can be no better than we strive to be. And finally, we will never reach our full potential until we learn how to love ourselves and to love one another. And that will be evidenced by how we treat each other. God bless you. God bless America. Be good to yourself. And until next time, stay strong, stay united, and do not fear racism. Bye now.